Hello, my dear psychology graduate students. Today we're going to talk about the psychological response to the victims of natural disaster. And this topic is very timely because of the recent typhoon that hit the Philippines, specifically in the Visayas region. And this is very helpful to those who are very interested to join the groups of psychologists responding to the victims, because this will give you an idea the processes, the protocols, the competencies that you need for you to be able to respond to a disaster as a psychologist. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you our guest speaker. I'm so blessed to have her with us. And she has been into this work. She has been responding to natural disaster in many instances. And personally, she was my colleague. She was my classmate when we were studying in the University of the Philippines, and we were together in many projects, community projects. We were doing community work. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you my beautiful friend, very passionate, very community-centered person. No other than Ms. Mae Nagtalon. Let us welcome her with our virtual applause. All right. So again, we welcome you, May, to our webinar regarding the trauma management, specifically on natural disaster management. And we are so privileged, we are so blessed to have you with us in our class, in our webinar. And it is a great joy and definitely a deep learning for all of us to learn from you, from your experiences in the field. Okay, so wala nang paligoy-ligoy pa, we now welcome you, May, to this webinar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rodius, for inviting me to be a resource person for this particular episode of your class. I'd like to, and hello to everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mae Nagtalon, and I'm also a professor at the Department of Psychology at De La Salle University, Dasmariñas. And my students would know me as Professor Marinel Cordero. I go by my single name, Mae Nagtalon, because most of my colleagues, my friends, and my clients know me by that name. I have a clinical and developmental psychology background because that's my major and minor in my graduate studies. I'm also a consultant at the DLSUD Center for Applied Psychology. I'm a certified life coach and a certified Gestalt therapist at Life Coach Mae Fount of Wellness. And if you want to know more about me and know more about what I'm doing, then you can visit my page, Life Coach Mae Fount of Wellness in Facebook. I am also a speaker in different topics such as stress, anxiety, anger management, parenting, and bullying. I am a creator and facilitator of wellness workshops as well. And with regards to psychosocial support specialists in disaster response, I have done much work already since 2006. That was the first time that I had my work in disaster response. It was with a group of my program advisor in my graduate studies, Dr. Bollet. And that was after Typhoon Reming. We went to Albay together with some volunteer students who were under Dr. Bollet Bautista. The next one that I had was Typhoon Ondoy. Okay, this time I went with, that was in 2009, and this time I went with a group of student volunteers from Ateneo de Manila. And the big disaster response, one of the two major disaster response that I went to would be after the Bohol earthquake in 2013. And that time I was with the Operation Blessing. It's the outreach arm of CBN Asia and 700 Club. By the way, that was my second time to work with Operation Blessing because the first time that I worked with them was after Typhoon Ramin in Albay in 2006. After that, I was deployed to work with World Vision International in the Visayas in December 2013 after the Typhoon Haiyan. That's the international name for Typhoon Yolanda. And our headquarters was in Cebu City. And we worked all over the Panay Island, Ormoc, and Tacloban. So this was an international emergency response, and I worked with an international organization that time. After that, in January 2014, I was with the Health Futures Foundation. It's a foundation headed by Dr. Jaime Galvestan, who is the former secretary of the Department of Health. And the latest that I was with is with the DCAP of the LSUD together with the PhilRads. And we went to the evacuation sites in Batangas after Taal volcano eruption. And before that, I almost forgot, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was also actively involved in giving telecounseling, telepsychotherapy to people who availed of our services through the UP Diliman Psychological Services or PsychServe, and also with the DLSUD Center for Applied Psychology. So those are the things that I do with regards to disaster response.
Okay, great, great, May. May, majority of my students do not have any experience at all in view of responding to a disaster, specifically on addressing the trauma of people who experience the disaster. And basically, what you're going to share with us in this webinar will definitely benefit our students. And for sure, your experiences will inspire them to probably volunteer one day to join the psychologists who really serve the people in a disaster. Okay, moving on. Since this is I would like the students to understand the basic procedures, the rationale, ano yung mga proseso na nangyayari. So basically, what we would like to hear from you is the whole processes that is happening in being as a psychologist responding to a disaster. Okay. So now the question is, based on your experience, describe the specific procedures, preparations, and protocols before responding to the victims of a natural disaster in evacuation centers.
Okay. So I think we are familiar with the phases of disaster management, which we refer to disaster management as the our response or how we handle disaster. So we make use of the resources, we make planning, and also learn from the experience itself. So there are
excuse me,
phases.
Disaster management is the common term being used. Yun yung pinaka-common na term na ginagamit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There are phases of disaster management. So the pre-disaster phase would be the prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. So in here, I would say na it's the government agency that initiates this. So it's the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So they would initiate the phase here, the pre-disaster phase, which I mentioned, the prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. So they would have plans here. They would have different meetings, discussions to make plans on how to prevent bigger impacts of the disaster, even if it has not happened yet. So that's why it's the pre-disaster phase. There are already meetings and preparations or plannings being done even before a disaster happens. That's the role of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. And of course, this is in coordination with other key players in the field, like NGOs and other national government agencies like the Department of Social Work. And there would be other agencies as well. And after the pre-disaster, the disaster happens, then we have the post-disaster phase, which would be including the response, the recovery, and the reconstruction. The psychosocial support that we are giving would be in the response phase already. So pag nangyari yung disaster, ang unang papasok dyan would be the rescue team, no? Yung i-rescue yung mga nasalanta. And then search and rescue also, kung may mga isa-search na mga bodies, no, we have to account for the people who were lost during that disaster, yung mga namatay. So there's a search and rescue response, and of course relief operation. That's very important that it has to come in because people will be needing food, water, and also shelter. So yun yung mga unang papasok. After some time, pag medyo nakasettle na, no, pero syempre hindi pa fully settled at that time, pag medyo nakakasettle down na yung mga tao, they have place to stay, they have food, they have water, yung mga basic needs nila are addressed already. That's the time that the psychosocial support service would come in. So tayo na mga nasa psychology, and even social workers can also come, mga Christian counselors also go and do that. Hindi tayo yung una na magre-respond. So merong talagang order yan ng pagtulong. Kaya pinakauna talaga yung mga minention ko kanina. And pag medyo settled down na, quiet na, then that's the time that we can go into help. And after that, what follows after the response phase is the recovery of the community and then reconstruction of infrastructures.
Okay. But when you say recovery, sino ba yung pumapasok yung mga psychologists?
No, hindi na tayo yun.
Hindi na.
The recovery of the community. So, yun na mga programs ng government na mostly ang nakapasok. So, sa atin, yung ating ginagawa na psychosocial support would be in the response.
Okay. You mentioned many areas na you were able to visit. Generally, just for example, ilang days bago kayo makapasok? So for example, nangyari yung typhoon siya ngayon. So ilang araw, basically, generally, bago pumasok ang mga psychologists?
Siguro mga earliest, maybe 2 weeks siguro yung earliest.
After 2 weeks?
Yes, hindi ka po pwedeng pumasok pa ng first week kasi magulo pa yun, di ba?
Okay.
So lalo na kung typhoon, like Typhoon Yolanda, even in my experience when we went to Typhoon Yolanda, that was already like a month after, it was really, magulo pa siya. It was so dirty na wala pang anything in place at that time. All stores were closed, walang pagkukuhanan ng mga kailangan, mga food, water, wala. Everything was closed and the roads were so dirty, tubig-tubig, puro putik. So, ganun yung mga senaryo.
Okay. So it means ang mga psychology, hindi talaga sila, are they involved in a kind of planning, yung parang planning phase bago pumasok talaga, for example, yung mga psychologists, yung maraming psychologists. Meron din ba mga psychologists na involved doon sa planning?
I'm not so familiar with that, but siguro meron din, no? Kasi they have to consult the different agencies and different key players yun sa disaster response. I suppose there are also psychologists represented in there. So we have the Department of Social Work. So most probably they're the ones who bring in the psychologists in the planning.
Okay. So basically, just to emphasize, it is the government who actually parang manage the pinaka-main player. And the rest will just be coordinating with the government agencies. Okay. All right. Okay.
And I may also add na in my experience for disaster response, Of course, it's the government that oversees everything, pero hindi naman kakayanin ng government. So, the government needs help from different sectors. So, dito na pumapasok ngayon yung mga NGOs, mga non-government organizations, mostly yung mga nagbibigay ng relief operation, they're involved in that, and also the psychosocial support would be coming from NGOs.
Okay. All right. How about the yung planning ninyo before you immerse to the community, before you go to the community, ano yung mga preparations na ginagawa ninyo?
Yeah. With regards to that, of course, like for example, there's an NGO na gustong magtulong sa isang area. So I suppose the NGO also need to coordinate with one another para meron sila kanya-kanyang area na papasok. Kung halimbawa sa isang area, all the NGOs went there. So walang tutulong dun sa ibang area. So also have a way of coordinating, like they also divide the areas kung sino yung NGO na papasok sa bawat area. And I observe from my experience, the organization coordinates with the barangay captain, with the mayor or the governor, and then there would be point persons, like if you want to go to this particular barangay, so the NGO coordinates with the barangay captain. Kung hindi kaya ng barangay captain na siya yung mag-asikaso na magiging operation ninyo, then there is a point person that's assigned to coordinate with the lead organization or the NGO. And then after that, the lead organization prepares the team. No? Magpo-propose na ng team, there's a team leader and the team members. So ano ba yung gusto na services na ibigay ng particular organization na to? So most probably, in my case, there were times na relief operation plus psychosocial support. There was also a time na psychosocial support, relief operation, there was a medical team and a dental team. So all in siya. So pwede rin ganun ang mangyari. So that's the composition of the team members depending on what the organization would want. Of course, kasama na rin yung mga relief distributors at that time. And there's also, when there's relief operation, there's much coordination with the head of the community. Sometimes they also tap the police to help, no? Dun ginagamit yung logistics, like yung mga truck ng police, and then sila na rin yung nagtutulong na magbuhat, mag-distribute. So it depends on the area, paano yung resources ng community. And that's the composition of the team. And then there's a briefing before we go there. So we have to know the geography, the target locations, and baka kami i-deploy, what's the situation on the ground, what should you expect when you get there. So like before, when I was deployed to Bohol, the head of the organization, the head of Operation Blessing, gave me the scenario na if you come here, kasi she was at the site at that time when she gave me the call, if you come here, there may be a chance. No? Actually, she told me I will be sent to that area where there are sinkholes. And then while we were talking, she told me, oh, there's the sound again, parang bombang bumagsak yung lupa. So things na gano'n, no, they have to let you know what you should expect when you get there. Also yung lodging mo, and then the arrangement for food, for water, for transportation, and of course, meron pa ring extra budget for that. Although normally the NGO takes care of all the expenses, so even the transportation. And yung transportation mo, like if you come from your house going to the airport, and then coming from the airport going back to your house, there are organizations that reimburse yung transportation mo from yung going to the airport and back, or whatever fare that you had acquired or used during the time of your disaster response work with them. Okay. Meron na organizations na hindi nagre-reimburse, so it really depends on the financial capacity of the organization. Okay. And then there's also. So you have to plan ano bang magiging gagawin natin when we get there. So ano yung activities that we're going to give to these people. So may planning din. And then pagdating mo doon, so you work, and then yung last part would be before you leave the place, there's an endorsement and referral system. So ina-identify na sino yung mga survivors na nangangailangan pa ng extra help after the group leaves. So there's a referral system in place at binibigay yun sa point person. And syempre in every barangay, there's health officer. So doon sinasubmit ng point person yung mga endorsements and referrals.
Okay.
And, yeah,
before you continue, May, gaano katagal yung orientation before kayo pumunta doon sa area?
Sandali lang yon, like they call you for an afternoon of a few hours lang.
Then after that orientation, immediately you are deployed to the...
Yeah, given na meron na kayong experience or meron na kayong training in disaster response. Okay, so dun, in my case kasi, dun sa mga naunang disaster response ko, may experience na yung kasama ko, they had training already in disaster response. So hindi na kailangan nung and they are from the field of psychology. So hindi na kailangan pa yung like matagal na training kasi trained na. Okay, and this one with regards to the Taal volcano eruption disaster response, what we did, the De La Salle DASMA did, nag-call sila ng mga volunteers, and then they had PFA orientation for everyone who wanted to join. So
what is PFA?
Psychological first aid.
Okay.
That's the one that they so lahat ang dami nag-sign up noon eh. So there were different batches for the orientation, and then they announced kung kailan merong team na pupunta dun sa evacuation site, and people who were interested also signed up for that. So we were divided into different teams. So yun yung preparation na ginawa naman with regards sa mga wala pang background. So they had the orientation of the psychological first aid.
And who's the one giving the orientation, rather? Sino nagbibigay ng orientation?
It's like the organization, like De La Salle, for example, Department of Psychology, La Salle, and the Center for Applied Psychology in La Salle DASMA. So they were the ones who organized that, and they invited a resource person.
And you mentioned about a while ago, you mentioned about being indoors. Sino yung nag-indoors sa inyo pagdating nyo sa field?
Pagdating sa field.
Sino nag-welcome sa inyo, and eventually, sino yung nag-indoors sa inyo sa mga tao?
So when we get there, so meron na kasing halimbawa, or our team, for example, before we get there, meron ng prior contact, halimbawa dun sa barangay captain. So meron ng communication that this team is going to arrive and will give this kind of services. So meron ng communication na ganun. So waiting na sila na dadating yung team. Ganun yung klase ng coordination. It's very important din yung coordination kasi para may mag-welcome sa inyo, parang ang hirap naman kung dumating kayo doon tapos mag-surprise sila, sino itong mga to? So it's really good na meron earlier communication before going there dun sa barangay captain or the mayor of that place. But siguro, we had an experience before na during after Typhoon Yolanda kasi, so the communication was not yet very good. Yung mga signal ng cellphone, hindi pa masyadong maayos in summer. So, dun sa plan namin, sa itinerary namin, we were going to this particular barangay. We didn't know, kasi may team leader, no, na hindi na contact ng team leader namin, yung barangay captain, but we proceeded with the itinerary. So when we get there, ang usapan namin was to meet at the barangay hall. Pagdating namin dun, wala nang barangay hall. So sabi naman, asan ang barangay hall dito? So talagang sira na yung barangay hall. So then we had to ask around, saan yung barangay captain? Of course, dahil maliit na lugar, so they would know where the barangay captain is. So, yung mga ganong klase na kulang ng coordination, but syempre hindi naman kasalanan ng team leader dahil nawalan nga ng signal sa cellphone. So yun, nagkapapatagal, no? Instead na pagdating nyo doon, you're able to do your job immediately. So ang nangyari, they had to look for the barangay captain, and the barangay captain had to announce to the whole community that there's a team that's going to this kind of service. So, and they had to organize people. So natagalan before we were able to start. But of course, they accepted the services that we were offering at that time.
Okay. You've met, yeah, continue, May.
And if you want to know ano yung preparations also for deployment with regards to the self, no? So it's very important also, like if you're invited to join a disaster response, you have to do your own self-preparation also. So you have to assess yourself if you're really ready to go for the disaster response. So you have to check on the different aspects of yourself. Are you physically fit to go there? Yung mindset mo, emotional and mentally, are you good to go there? Kasi there would be so much pressure when you get there. And then are you ready to mingle with people who you don't know at all? So you will be meeting strangers, yung mga mag-avail ng services nyo, and also the people in your team. There are not people that you know. So sometimes it's your first time to meet them. So strangers sila. So you should be ready for this. And also your spirituality should also be strong, no? Kasi baka ma-trigger din yung mga spiritual values mo when you witness the disaster in the area. You see the suffering of the people. And if I can also share my experience when I was invited to go to Bohol, and the head of the Operation Blessing told me that there are sinkholes and it's kind of dangerous. Ganon. Because of my passion to help, no? Because my heart is really in there, I did not think of that anymore. But I had strong faith in the Lord that if He's going to send me to this mission, He is going to take care of me and He's going to keep me safe because I'm doing this work for His people. Yun. So you have to be really prepared in the different aspects of yourself. And then if you're not ready, I advise you not to proceed. Okay, and then also things to bring. You have to make sure that you are able to pack the things that you need for the response, the proper clothing, the proper footwear, and medicine. Yeah, it's very
emergency
important.
Kits.
Yes, emergency kits. Okay, so you have also to ask, no, sa orientation, ano ba yung pupuntahan ko? Maputik ba? Ano ba yung so you can also bring your boots. So sa akin nun, I found out na meron akong like yung boots na ginagamit sa baha. Yung sole nun eh. So I think that was kind of good to use in kahit saan, dry or wet. Kasi like pumunta ka sa area na maraming pako-pako, then makapal yung sole nun. And then if it's wet, it's also safe to use it. So that was the one that I used.
How about your pananamit?
Mananamit something na mga t-shirt lang, yung light lang siya and hindi mainit kasi syempre mainit dun sa lugar. Syempre sa Philippines naman mainit talaga yung weather natin, so expecting na mainit.
Okay, before you continue, May.
Lamig ka pumunta doon, you go to an area na sobrang lamig, then you also need to bring your jacket. And payo also. Yeah. Kasi syempre maglalakad ka sa mainit, and cap, okay, to protect yourself. Yan. The travel naman,
May, before you continue, una-una is like just to emphasize na kapag may mga disaster, hindi tayo basta-basta pwede lang dahil psychologist tayo, pumunta ako doon. So dapat na makikipag-connect tayo sa mga agencies or organizations, even the government. Yeah, that's very important. Hindi porket I want to help tapos so good ka na lang. Hindi po pwede yun. You have to coordinate first before you enter an area. Hindi po pwede yung parang unwelcome ka na dumating ka na lang na ganon. Everything has to be in coordination. Okay, meron ako naalala like during this Taal volcano eruption, no?
Because of that, ang daming tao na who wanted to help. Ganun. So bigla-bigla na lang silang dumadating sa evacuation area without coordination. So there was a time na minsan dumadating sila 12 midnight, tulog na yung mga tao dun sa evacuation site. So para hindi mapanis yung food kasi wala namang pagtataguan ng food, they had to wake up the people who were sleeping para yung dinala doon. Minsan naman sobrang dami ng food na napapanis na rin or siguro talagang sobrang kain na yung mga tao para lang maubos yung food na dinala because there were so many people going there at the same time to bring food. So walang coordination. So doon talaga important na before you bring in something or bring any type of help, you coordinate para ma-schedule, no? Para hindi naman masayang yung mga dinadala na mga food or services na nagkakasabay-sabay. Hindi mapakinabangan to the max na mga survivors.
Okay. All right. What is the basic I mean, some of this you mentioned already, but you might want to add something more. What is the basic orientation about natural disaster, specifically the psychotrauma management?
Okay. So about natural disaster, yeah, I think we went through that already about the disaster management, so it's about how we deal with the human, material, economic, or environmental impacts of the said disaster. So I was also already able to mention about the disaster management.
Yeah. Okay. About the trauma aspect, kasama ba ito sa orientation ninyo na we're going to respond to trauma? What is the basic orientation about the trauma as an organization? Paano kayo mag-respond?
Yeah, so we go back to the PFA, the psychological first aid. That's the form thing that we use in disaster response. But prior to Typhoon Yolanda, we were using the critical incident stress debriefing or CISD. Yun naman yung ginagawa talaga dati before.
Is that different? Can you talk about the difference between the PFA and debriefing?
Yeah. With the CISD during that time, yun yung ginagamit talaga before. Like you gather groups together and you ask them, how was your experience in the disaster? Ano yung pinagdaanan? So basically, they will be telling you their stories about their actual experiences during the disaster. And ang rationale kasi noon was that if they are able to express it, that would help them, kasi na-express nila yung pinagdaanan nila, yung mga pains nila, yung sufferings nila. So that was the rationale of the CISD. But then later on, there were studies that said na hindi helpful yung CISD, and instead it was it gave some damage to the people who went through the CISD kasi walang follow-up because it was just a one-time thing. So when you open something, you open the wound, and then you are not able to, you're not there anymore, Halimbawa, you open that trauma in them, the stress in them, and then magmamanifest sila ng mga symptoms, there's no one there already kasi umalis na kayo lugares kasi walang follow-up. So that's why they came up with the PFA. Actually, the PFA, the psychological first aid, was already being used abroad even before Typhoon Yolanda. But then, nung Typhoon Yolanda, there were so many foreign nationals who came in to help, many international organizations who came in to help. So that's why na-emphasize yung paggamit ng PFA because of these people from foreign countries who came. Pero it was in place already, and it was being promoted by the World Health Organization already before. Kaya lang hindi pa natin ginagamit sa Philippines before. So nung Typhoon Yolanda, dun talaga ginamit na yung PFA. So we were told na do not use CISD anymore because the WHO is not advising to use CISD anymore. So use PFA instead. So doon na nag-shift yung approach na paggamit ng PFA when going to the disaster response.
Okay, so it's a big sabihin when you were talking about debriefing, although there is a good intention to help the people, pero yung proseso, I mean, what do you mean? Hindi siya medyo may negative effect ito sa mga tao?
Yes, that's according to the studies, na parang nare-retraumatize yung mga
Okay.
because of the process of the CISD. Although syempre ako, I don't have the means to validate din yung ginawa namin dun sa past na disaster response namin where we
So na-experience mo yung debriefing din.
yes, so we use the
Okay.
una like in Typhoon Ganing, in Bohol earthquake, yun ang pinagamit sa akin noon CISD. But for Typhoon, nung nandun na si Typhoon Yolanda, that was the time na nag-shift na sa PFA. So
Alright.
I have a way to validate then kung talagang naging harmful ba siya dun sa mga tao na ginawa namin ng CISD kasi we were not able to do any study on that. But
Okay.
it's sing on the
But for the sake of the student, Jane, for the sake of the student, can you briefly describe to them what debriefing is all about based on your experience? What exactly do you
yes.
do?
Okay. So the critical incident stress debriefing, what you basically do there is to ask the people to talk about their experience during the disaster.
Mhm.
And then it's like when you
Just for example, kung nakakita ko ng may pinapatay, ikakwento ko ulit yun, parang ganon?
yes, oo, kaya yung down or inanod, gano'n. So anything, hindi mo naman i-force na sabihin nila yon, but you ask the question in a general way, what was your experience during the disaster? Siyempre, yun yung experience nila, yun ang ikukwento nila, di ba? Talagang very vivid na kwento yung pagkakasabi nila dun sa mga kwento nila. And they are also crying when they are telling you their stories, pati ikaw maiiyak ka din. So, pero at the end naman, after the session, of course, we do also summarize the discussion, the sharing, and then we also give our inputs, ganon. And then at the end of the session, we also want to know how are they feeling, and they all report that they are feeling better kasi nailabas nila yung experience nila, parang nakaluwag sa kalooban nila na nakapagkwento sila. Kasi iba din yung nagkukwentuhan sila na sila-sila, iba din yung nakakwentuhan nila dun sa isang outsider na hindi naka-experience o experience nila. So yun yung basis namin noon at that time na nakatulong naman yung ginawa namin because they reported to us na gumaan ng pakiramdam nila after the CISD that we gave to them. So, yun nga. But then, because World Health Organization, advised to use the PFA instead because of that kind of reports in the studies, kaya PFA na yung ginagamit ngayon.
Okay.
So, if you just share, there are 8 PFA core actions included para lang for the enlightenment of students. So, the first part is the contact and engagement. So, when you get there, sabi nila, when you get there, you PFA nga gamitin mo. So, you look around, sino yung mga tao na tingin mo in need. Di ba, may nagka-cry sa isang sulok. So, you can go to that person and ask kung ano yung kailangan niya. And then, we're not necessarily asking ba't ka umiiyak kasi that will dun sa parang CISD na, di ba? So, ano ba yung kailangan niya? And then you give safety and comfort to that person. So, yung first is contact and engagement. So, you go to that person in a non-intrusive and compassionate and helpful manner. So, i-approach mo yung person and then you ask ano yung kailangan niya. So, you give that person a sense of safety and comfort. So, that's the second one. And kung naghahagulgul siya halimbawa, so you have to stabilize the person. So you have to calm that person, do some things para mas na ma-comfort pa siya, para mag-calm down siya. And then information gathering on current needs and concerns. So ito yung part na you habang kausap mo siya, then you will ask also ano ba yung mga immediate needs and concerns niya. So that's really part of the PFA. And then practical assistance, kung yung need niya masasagot na agad at that particular moment, like halimbawa, nawawala yung kanyang anak, and then kaya siya umiiyak, so nakita mo na yung need, and gusto niyang malaman, gusto niyang magkaroon ng communication sa anak niya. So if there's anyone in there na in charge of that, ng mga search and rescue team or may mga groups doon na nag-coordinate yan, pwede mo na siyang ilapit agad doon sa grupo na yon para maibigay yung information na matulungan siya doon sa pag-connect doon sa kanyang anak, recovery, search and rescue ng kanyang anak. And then, connection with social supports. Like, halimbawa, na-cut off yung communication sa family na nasa ibang lugar. Then, that is your role also to make a way na makakonect siya. So, find ways na dun sa team siguro or anyone in the disaster response team would have some way or have a form of help na gano'n na nagpo-connect dun sa mga kamag-anak. So, pwede mo na rin siyang ilapit doon.
So, ibig sabihin, parang, just given what you've mentioned, parang, nasanay kasi as a psychologist, pag gusto mong tumulong, so very psychological yung approach natin. Pero as what you mentioned, you're basically responding to the human concern of the people.
Yes, so ganon. Yung PFA. Pero meron din kadugtong pa. Usually kasi in PFA orientation na dito sa Philippines, no, yung mga na-attenan ko, they only talk about look, listen, and link. No, 3 L. So look, tingnan mo sino nangangailangan, listen, and then link. To address the needs, you have to link them to that particular person or group na makakatulong sa kanila. But there's more to that, no? Information on coping, that's also part of PFA. So dito na tayo pumapasok, no? We provide information about stress management and their coping ways, coping ways for stress management and how they can be adaptive to the situation, and then identifying their strengths so that they can recover faster from this disaster.
Okay.
And engage with collaborative services. Like halimbawa, one would be the referral system na ginagawa namin. Halimbawa, meron kang na-identify na meron na ma-manifest ng trauma or depression or anxiety, then you can link that person to yung sino ba yung talagang maybe to their health officer. Yan. So, linkage with collaborative services. So, marami din aspects yung PFA. Like I had mentioned, there are 8 core parts of the PFA.
Okay. May, for the practical aspect, for example, dumating kayo doon sa evacuation center, right? Mm-hmm. Pag nasa evacuation center ka, ang dami-daming aspeto na nangyayari dyan. Sino ang magde-decide kung saan magfo-focus? Just for example, saan magfo-focus? Just for example, merong individual needs, merong group needs, or even there's a community need that might be happening. So, sino ang nagde-decide immediately, o dito muna tayo mag-respond sa mga bata, o dito tayo sa mga kababaihan? Who makes that decision?
Yeah. Oo. Sa planning pa lang yun, pag nandun ka na sa grupo, like when you arrive to that particular area already, so, nagpa-plan na kayo. Alam nyo na before you go there, bibigyan na kayo ng idea ng contact person ninyo dun sa area, sino yung dadatnan ninyo. So there would be children, there would be adolescents, adults, and older people. So alam nyo na yung composition ng people. So doon pa lang, like for us, what we did in Bohol, because we had that information already beforehand. But it depends on the barangay. It's not every day the same na meron kang enough information about the place that you're going. So the night before or the morning before we leave going to the area, nagpa-planning na kami. So meron tayong mga children, so mag-assign na sino yung mag-attend to these children. Ganun. So we have a team leader. So the team leader is the one who is in charge of the coordination, no? Lahat na kino-coordinate niya, yung pag-coordinate doon sa barangay captain or mayor or school, minsan pinupuntahan namin or sa principal or teacher, and then pag-coordinate ng transportation, ng food namin pagdating doon. So everything, budgeting siya na lahat. And then minsan pwede din na siya mag-assign. So, sasabihin niya may mga ganito na groups na nadadatnan doon. So, syempre, kung ano yung forte mo, among us will already volunteer saan kami group na papasok. So, may mga instances. There are also instances naman na hindi kayo binibigyan ng idea. You're not able to get that information. So, pagdating doon pa lang kayo magkaka-idea ano yung mga tao na, yung composition ng mga tao na dadatnan mo doon. So, kailan mabilisan din. It's very important yung decision making mo, mabilis. And at the same time, valid din yung decision mo. So, quick thinking talaga. Kailangan din doon. Yan, you're flexible to adapt kung ano yung dadat situation there.
Usually you work as an individual or as a team. But it's
usually as a team.
Ilan usually yung members ng team at ilan yung pinaka-composition ng buong yung pinaka-team la? Ilan ang composition usually?
Wala naman prescribed na number of people in a team because that will depend on the volunteers who will be going there. Pero like for example, kung malaki yung team niyo, pwedeng dalawang people ang in charge of one group doon sa area. Kung maliit naman, maghihiwa-hiwalay kayo, like one person lang for one group of people. Ganun. And it also happens, I'm talking about, and pag marami din yung mga gustong mag-avail, it happens na hindi ka lang one round ka lang. So it can be after one group, there's another group, hanggang matapos yung hapon nyo doon sa area na yon. So that happened to us in Bohol, na talagang in one day we were dealing with siguro 5-6 groups in one day.
Sino yung nag-organize ng grupo na yon? Is a social worker o kayo rin?
Kami rin. So, okay. Kami na rin kasi parang mas safe, mas smooth siya pag kami na rin. Like, we also learned from our experiences. Like, first day, so we had planned for first day. And then, at the end of the day, after dinner, mag-uusap kami what went wrong, what went right. So, we evaluate what we did. And then, from there, sasabihin namin, okay, tomorrow we will do this thing or we will do the same kasi effective siya. If not, then we do another way. Okay, so, nakita namin noon because we wanted to maximize the psychosocial support that was being offered to the survivors in Bohol. So, may relief operation kami laging kasama. So, may mga nag-distribute ng goods. So, people would, syempre, go first for the relief, no? They will for the relief. So, sayang naman yung nag-aantid na psychosocial support. So, what we did, we had a screening team. No, we had the screening team and then may checklist kami, no, if you have symptoms like this, ganon, and then you are referred to the psychosocial support service or if tsaka yung preference yun ng tao if the person thinks na he or she needs the psychological service. So may screening na kami before they go and line up for the relief. So ganon. So meron silang papel na ipapakita na galing na sila dun sa screening team. Ganon. And when the relief is given to them, ibibigay nila yung papel. Pag nakalagay na for psychosocial support, ihahatid nila dun sa psychosocial support team. Ganon. So we found that very effective kasi na-maximize yung pag-avail nila ng psychosocial support.
Sa isang team, ilan kayo lahat? Yung pinakamarami with your experience at yung pinakakaunti with your experience?
Siguro 10 yung pinakamarami. Mga 10, 12 ganun, pinakamarami.
At ilan yung more or less yung population ng pinupuntahan nyo na evacuation center?
Hindi ko na ma-remember, but what I can remember would be the number of people in every session that we had. So, meron mga 10 to 12 people in every group session that we had. And yun nga sabi ko, kung we experienced that in Bohol, na in one day, we were dealing with like 6 groups. So, talagang dire-diretso na trabaho. Siyempre, you have also give time to the time for travel, and then time for travel going there and travel going back dun sa headquarters.
Okay. So hindi kayo doon natutulog, hindi kayo nag-stay doon talaga.
Hindi. Yeah, we don't stay in the evacuation center. We if there's a, like for an NGO, they prepare the place for you to stay for the volunteers. Ganon. And that's your headquarters. So doon lahat mga relief goods are placed there. Sometimes, no, depende sa organization. Like in Bohol, kasama namin dun sa headquarters namin yung mga relief goods. And then, sama-sama kami dun sa headquarters namin. It was, during that time talaga, ang sa Bohol kasi when there's no power, walang tubig. I don't, but during that time, ganon. And then there was this kind doctor who offered yung hotel niya dun sa organization. So we were given yung parang siguro function hall ng hotel. Yun yung binigay sa amin na area namin. So that's where we had our yung mga meetings namin. There's where we eat already. And then we had rooms. Maayos naman yung lodging namin. Okay, we were blessed na may generator yung hotel, kaya may ilaw kami, may tubig kami. So, hindi kami nahirapan in that aspect. Meron ding times na mahirap. So, this one also, you have to be ready also. Hindi ka po pwedeng maarte. But of course, you have prioritize mo din yung safety mo din. So, yung worst that I had been to was in Samar. Kasi, you know, Samar is a very poor province. And during the orientation, they promised us na meron kaming bahay na titirhan. So, because maganda naman yung sinabi nila, may bed kayo and everything. So, comfortable place to stay, may bathroom, may toilet, gano'n. So, I signed up for that. And then, ang nangyari when we got there, it was a different scenario. Yung bahay na titirhan namin was used by another person. So, wala kaming matirhan. So, they placed us at the municipal hall building at the top floor na ang kanyang poste ay nakatagilid na. And syempre, that was dangerous. No? There is there. Paano kung mag-earthquake, matumba yung building, di ba? Kasama kami doon. And then we stayed in a tent inside the building. So there's a big tent that served as a room. So doon kami natutulog. Pero we brought our own foam, yung mga folding, parang mga thin na folding foams, gano'n. So we brought our own. So there's where we maglalatag na lang kami sa floor. Tapos doon kami matutulog. And the worst thing also was the toilet. When we got there, it was really so dirty. Tapos walang tubig. And we had to, yung mag-igib ng timba, we had to get water from yung parang manual na poso nila. So, kanya-kanyang bitbit kami ng timba pang ligo namin dun sa dirty na toilet. It was not even a bathroom. Toilet lang siya. Tapos may malaking window na open. So, syempre, isipin mo na kung baka may makasilip sa akin dito. So, and then, yung para makakuha kami ng tubig, papasok kami dun sa preso. You know, that yung jail. Papasok kami dun sa aisle ng jail. Dadaanan namin mga prisoners nila. Kasi yung poso nandun sa likuran ng building nila. So, doon, dadaanan namin yung mga selda-selda ng mga prisoners. And then, meron pa nagsabi sa amin na police na ito, kakahuli lang namin. Pumatay siya. Imagine that, no? Yung dadaanan mo na ganun, puro mga preso. Just for you to be able to get that water na pampaligo mo. Kasi syempre, if you come from the field, ang lagkit-lagkit mo, talagang you really need to take a bath. Yeah. So, expect the worst, no? Kahit na sinabihan kayo sa orientation na this is what's gonna happen, you also prepare yourself na it may not be the scenario when you get there.
All right. You mentioned about yung mga sessions ninyo. Where do you do the sessions? Doon mismo sa evacuation center, or you have a separate, merong tent na dedicated for doing sessions or activity, o doon mismo sa kung nandoon yung mga tao?
Doon na mismo, there's no dedicated tent kasi kulang pa nga sila sa mga tents nila. Sa dito sa Taal Volcano Eruption, they had this big gym. Tapos may kanya-kanyang tent sila sa loob. Also in Reming, in Albay, ganun din. It was open space. Tapos nagtayo sila ng mga tents doon. So we had to gather the people in another open space para doon namin i-meet yung mga tao.
Okay. So, can you describe briefly, just for example, sa isang session, ilang oras, sino yung mga taong umattend, at ano yung ginagawa nyo?
Okay. So, we gather the people. Like I said, coordination is very important. So, when you get there, pag maganda yung coordination, organize na yung mga tao. So, meron na naka-assign na halimbawa group 1, group 2, group 3 na mag-avail ng services nyo. And then,
babae, lalaki ito?
Sometimes adults or by age,
okay.
like adults, children, ganon. Minsan mixed group or kung kaya naman, kung marami facilitate, pwedeng separate yung male and female, ganon. So, depende talaga sa dami ng gagawa. And then, naka-assign na, and then meron kami among ourselves, okay, I will take this group, I will take this group. So, among ourselves, na kung
sabay-sabay, for example, tatlong sessions nangyayari simultaneously.
Yes, simultaneously. Okay. You have to maximize your time because you're not staying there hanggang gabi, di ba? You have to leave at 4 para makabalik ka doon sa headquarters ninyo. Ganon. Or ano man yung timetable ninyo. So, you have to maximize the time.
Okay. So, anong ginagawa basically?
We gather them and then mga 10 to 12 people. And then we use mga 1 hour, 1.5 hours per group. So, kasi PFA na, nung CISD, yun yung ginagawa namin, yung what I said earlier na we let them talk about their experience. With the PFA, it was more on telling them about stress management and asking them what are their strengths to cope with the disaster and how to help them recover. So yun na yung focus dun sa based sa PFA, it's information on coping. But even then, in my experience, no, kasi iniiwasan ng pag-usapan yung experience, iba yung disaster experience. Pero there will still be people na kahit na tanong mo, they really want to express kung ano yung nangyari sa kanila. So magkukwento pa rin sila. Hindi mo naman po pwedeng pigilan na magkwento sila, no? So nangyari yan sa amin sa Samar na nagkukwento pa rin kahit na wala na yung question namin about their experience, they still want to talk about their experience. And sa PFA naman, ang orientation kasi ng PFA, as much as possible, you don't entertain that anymore. Pero ang hirap din na pigilan mo yung tao na nagsasalita. And when person is already expressing, then the other people in that group can also resonate because it's the experience. They also want to talk about their own experience. Gusto nilang pakinggan mo sila. So, gano'n. And sa PFA orientation din, if you find someone na nagmamanifest ng symptoms, you separate that person and refer this person to another person na in charge for the one-on-one counseling. So, that's the idea of the PFA. Pero pag kulang kayo sa tao, ang hirap na rin siyang gawin na gano'n.
So, naranasan mo, ikaw lang ang nagpa-facilitate, wala kang kasama?
Meron naman kami mga team naman kami that go there. Kaya lang yung isolate mo yung tao. Sometimes sinisingit pa rin namin actually, we find out na ito needs further help kasi nag-breakdown na siya doon.
Nag-breakdown. So, nakaranas ka na may nagbe-breakdown talaga?
Oo. So, we separate that. Tatanggalin na siya sa grupo kasi according to PFA, pag makita yun, it will affect yung yung mood ng ibang tao doon sa grupo. So
exactly. Just for example, may nag-breakdown. Ano yung unang-unang gagawin mo?
Yung bawa, kung halimbawa may teammate ka, then that teammate is the one going to to take care of that person para maitanggal siya sa lugar and then mabigyan siya ng one-on-one counseling. Tapos yung isa, siya yung matitira to take care of in facilitating the group.
No, okay. All right. So basically ang ginagamit is the first psychological first aid.
Oo, yun na yung ginagamit since nung Typhoon Yolanda.
Wala nang iba pang psychosocial service, psychosocial processes na ginagamit. Maliban doon sa
Mostly yun ang ginagamit, and then when you identify the person as having symptoms, then you give one-on-one counseling. And of course, because we cannot stay long in the area, ang mangyayari nung follow-up niya will be endorsement to the point person and referral to the health officer, o kung meron silang psychologist doon or anyone who can take care of the follow-up, doon na siya i-endorse.
who is usually the point person?
I-assign yan nila when you go to the barangay. The barangay, it's either the barangay captain or the barangay captain is going to assign someone na siya yung point person doon. So, doon mag-coordinate yung NGO sa kanila.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Now, for the sake of the students, ano yung, before you jump into responding to a disaster, specifically natural disaster, ano yung specific skills na dapat meron ka before ka pumunta doon?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, important yung may PFA knowledge.
Okay.
Diba? Kasi yan nga yung gagamitin doon. And then, of
may
course,
may orientation namang na binibigay, di ba? Okay.
Kung wala ka pang knowledge about PFA, then you go through the PFA orientation. And I'd like to inform you also na you don't need to rely on the announced PFA orientations. You can do this on your own. You just go to Google and then search for free PFA courses.
Okay.
Pwede yun, no? Websites that offer that. And then you can also get a certificate for that after you finish the course. So go for
But here in the Philippines, meron bang institution na talaga nagbibigay ng PFA?
I see some organizations offering it with a fee.
Okay.
I don't there's an organization that offers it for free.
Ano yung nag-offer ng fee? Anong organization niya?
I'm not sure if PAP is doing that. Like, I'm not sure if it's for free, but I'm sure they offer that, the PFA. And there are organizations in the Philippines also. I see some ads sa Google. They are offering the PFA orientation for a fee.
Okay. Okay, going back. So, unang skills mo dapat meron kang PFA. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
PFA, and then counseling skills. Syempre, you already have that. Kasi important that you have the empathy, listening, tracking, diba? And asking the right questions through probing. So important din yon. And group facilitation skills. No, you know how to manage group. And then planning for activities. Ano yung gusto mong gawin doon? Like you want to have rapport building activity before you go into the giving the stress management information as a group. So those things, social skills is very important also because you have to be flexible, ready to adjust at all times, and you have to be accommodating and friendly to the other people in the team kahit na iba-ibang personalities kayo. And you have to be kind. And also, teamwork is very important. You cannot do it on your own. It has always to be within the team that you're doing a work. Decision-making skills is also very important because when you go to the area, when you arrive there, for sure, there are some things that you have to make decisions on. So, mabilisan yung decision-making. Kailan magaling ka din doon, and focusing on your role. You have to set the boundaries. Kung ang role mo ay magbigay ng PFA, magbigay ng psychosocial support, then that's your role.
Hindi pwedeng halo-halo, dapat may focus.
Yes, so mahirap yun, di ba? Baka mami nagbibigay ng relief. May kanya-kanyang toka talaga. Hindi po pwede yung
sa experience mo, may nangyayari bang gano'n dahil nga na-excite sa mga nangyari, sumisingit kung saan-saan?
So far, parang wala pa naman akong nakita ganun na nagman sa mga trabaho nila. Except na lang kung nakikiusap na like in the medical mission, halimbawa in Samar, because we were a very small team. We had one doctor, one dentist, and then apat yata kami o five na psychosocial support specialist. So natapos na namin yung work namin, and then yung medical mission ongoing pa, magkagabi na. So the doctor needed some assistance, mag-iilaw sa kanya, maglilista ng mga pasyente. So doon tumulong na rin yung iba after finishing their work. But that was because hiningi yung tulong. Hindi lang yung basta-basta nangingialam na doon na okay. So yun yung setting your boundaries, no? You should know what your role, focus on that. Proper mindset also is very important. So before you go there, you have to prepare your mind, your heart, and your soul for the work that you're going to do when you go
Anong preparation ang ginawa mo, May? In terms of your mindset?
Physical health muna, syempre, in-assess ko, am I healthy to go there? I sleep early. Talagang lahat ng preparation. Sleep early, tapos yung kumain ng maayos, healthy food, hydrate myself, exercise. And then, prayers, syempre, yun yung nagpapalakas ng loob ko, yung prayers. I pray to God to keep me safe, na I'm going to this mission to help people. So, I trust in God na I will be safe in that mission that I will be going. So, and also safety for travel. So,
For example, may pamilya ka, ano pa yung added information na pwede mo ibigay? Kasi may pamilya ka, iiwanan mo yung pamilya mo.
Yeah, if you have your family, of course, you have to ask the permission also of your family. Your husband, papayagan ka ba ng asawa mo na pupunta doon, di ba?
Hindi ka pwedeng tumakas.
And ano ba yung condition ng iiwanan mong mga anak, di ba? Meron taga sa kanila. So, you have to look at the different aspects of your life na ready ka to go to that one. Okay, so lakas ng loob, syempre. And openness of mind, kasi iba yung sinabi sa'yo sa orientation or iba yung na-expect mo pero baka iba yung dadatnan mo doon. And,
flexibility.
Papasok yung flexibility. Always be prepared. O pack everything that is necessary before you travel going to the headquarters. So sabi ko kanina, choose appropriate clothes and footwear and medicines. And pag nandun ka na, when you go, each day you go to a particular evacuation site or community, you only bring yung necessary items para when you walk, when you move around, light lang, wala kang maraming bit. Maganda din, like for me, I was given this vest na marami siyang packet. So I can put my phone there, my pen there. So yun lang yung dala ko in a small bag. So yun ang And payong also, that's very important. Self-care, yun, I mentioned already about taking care of yourself. And faith in God. Very important yun. Hindi siya mawawala yung spirituality, your connection with God, because doon ka kukuha ng strength mo talaga during the disaster response. Especially when you see the disaster, when you see the faces of the survivors crying.
You mentioned about spirituality, and spirituality is a natural response for the Filipinos.
Yes.
How do you incorporate that to the first psychological first aid?
Actually, wala na, effortless na kasi they are the one who bring it out na, no? When you tell them when you ask them, what is your source of strength? Lagi nilang sasabihin, God. So they always go back to God. How they were able to cope with the disaster, how they were saved from that disaster. So, hindi na siya mas mahirap na i-incorporate pa.
Okay. Just for example, they mentioned about God. And just for example, ending a session. I mean, paano mo siya pwedeng gamitin? Just for example, to end a session. Can you end with a prayer?
We can use it. Oh yeah, we can use it in the form of a prayer. We ask someone in the group to lead the prayer.
Or do some rituals perhaps that is very common to them. Okay.
Yes, so pero syempre yeah, you can do that, like prepare for a ritual before you go there, and you can bring your stuff for that particular ritual. That's also good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And earlier you were mentioning about meeting people, and you mentioned about going.
Sorry.
You mentioned about meeting people, talking to people, and you mentioned about going to Visayas, and you're talking about language. I mean,
Yeah.
being Tagalog,
That's
being in
one thing
Manila.
also.
So how do you connect with people, and
That's a challenge.
communication is very important.
That's
So
a
how do you
challenge.
do it? How do you do it?
Okay, so there are areas na nakakaintindi naman sila ng Tagalog, although they cannot speak well, but they can understand. There are areas naman na hindi talaga. So we have an interpreter. Although syempre, baka some people will say, what about the confidentiality of the session? Pero that's the only way that we can communicate with them.
Yeah. Okay. Or perhaps I don't know, but in the future, then you can invite also psychologists coming from the area, you know.
Yeah. Kaya lang minsan kulang din yung volunteers. So hindi laging natatapat na yung volunteer can also speak that particular language. Yan. Or if somebody in the group is good to be the translator, pwede na rin yun.
Okay. And you mentioned about preparing, knowing how to prepare activities. Now, we're dealing with children, so importante rin siguro na marunong tayo mag-prepare ng mga activities para sa mga bata. Is that part also of the psychological first aid?
Yes, it can also be part of the PFA. So, yung mga group that are in charge for the team, wala na masyadong processing na gagawin. It's more of inaaliw yung mga bata, no? Making them happy at that particular moment. So, giving them a sense of safety and comfort. So you can make or facilitate activities for them to have a sense of safety and comfort. So you have to be sensitive also with the kind of activities that you're going to give. Like for example, ano nga yung game na the ship is sinking. Yun. Galing ko na typhoon sila, na flood. So don't do that. Kasi
that's very insensitive.
Diba? Oo. Baka lalo pa silang ma-trauma. The boat is sinking. Diba?
Really? May gumawa ng ganon?
May nag-suggest, but hindi namin ginawa. Tsaka yung there was something about earthquake din parang ganon. Parang similar. The earth is shaking, parang ganon. So we cannot do that kasi na earthquake nga sila So you have to plan yung mga activities na that will make them feel safe.
So sa team ninyo, merong mga nagpo-focus talaga sa mga bata.
Yes,
pakiramdam nila mas magaling sila sa mga bata.
Oo.
Okay.
Ganun kung ano yung expertise mo, dun ka na mag-volunteer sa group na yun.
Okay. All right.
May mga drawing din, if you want, you can bring in supplies. Pwede kayo magpa-drawing, coloring din sa mga bata. But we also appreciate that.
Okay, before we go to the last three questions, have you, just for example, with the disaster, definitely may mga experience ng casualties, may mga namamatay. All right, and that is very devastating, definitely, for the people.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced, talking to people na namatayan talaga, and we're almost really in the brink of death also? And how do you handle that? How did you handle that?
Ito yung saddest kasi even before we went to that area, the point person already had in mind na ipakausap sa akin yung person na to. So this guy was the brother of someone who died. No? The sister and the niece died. because the earthquake happened in the morning. So the sister and the family of the sister were having breakfast. And then nag-roll yung boulder. As in, nag-roll siya and then, ano yun? Yung talagang nahulog siya or nag-roll siya mismo dun sa house.
Natabunan, naipit.
Nadaganan talaga yung sister Chinese na bagong panganak. Parang 1 month old lang siya. Tapos yung isang pamangkin na parang 3 years old, we also met that child, nakatakbo siya. So na-save siya. So during that time, that brother was away. Nandun siya sa sentro ng town. So he was not there. So ang ano niya, he cannot recover from it kasi yung ang laki ng guilt niya na he was not there to save his sister. So kaya even before I got there, naka-ready na ipakausap sa akin siya.
Okay. All right. And
the experience was naman, the session ended na maayos naman. He felt better after the session.
Okay.
Like nga, walang follow-up kasi sandali lang naman kami dun sa place. Hindi naman like when we are deployed, babalik pa ulit kami sa area na yun. Hindi na ganun. We will be deployed to other areas na naman.
And speaking of that, following up on that, ilang araw kayo nag-i-stay sa area?
Usually it's 1 week.
Okay.
One week feels like 1 month already.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Heavy nung work. No? It's not just a physical, but the emotional and mental aspect and the spiritual aspect as well. Kaya hindi ka pwedeng magbabad no longer than that. From experience and also what the NGOs are getting us, yun ay maximum talaga. It's 1 week.
Okay.
And if you want to do another work, you have to rest, no? Magre-rest ka muna for a minimum of 1 week before you go back to another area for the disaster response.
Are you talking about the follow-up?
No, you will be deployed to another area.
To another area. But have you done
gawin ulit.
Yeah. Have you done follow-ups also?
No, I haven't done any follow-up kasi nga yung nangyayari kasi from one place to another.
Okay.
There's much resources to go back for follow-up. Yung mga NGOs, pag natapos na yung isang area, they don't go back. Like, tapos sa isang barangay, hindi na nila babalikan yun kasi kasabay nga palagi ng relief operation.
Pero in as far as you know, meron bang naggumagawa ng follow-ups?
I haven't heard about it na may follow-up. Kaya nga ang lagi nagiging ending namin is the endorsement and referral system.
Oh, okay. And just in case they will be needing you, definitely they will be kukontakin ulit nila kayo.
Pwedeng gano'n. No?
Okay.
Or na mismo sa health officer nila dun sa Oo. And if I may also add, I had another experience also in disaster response na hindi ako directly na nagbigay ng psychosocial support dun sa mga survivors, but to the people who were relief distributors. Yun naman yung mga binigyan ko ng psychosocial support. But it was more of a stress debriefing yung pinapagawa sa akin noon. It was the requirement of the organization. So it was international organization. And during that time, so ang dami pumapasok na international organizations helping for the Typhoon Haiyan or Typhoon Yolanda disaster. So I was with this team and ang trabaho ko, I was with the staff care unit. So all of their employees, local employees, they were deployed to give the relief operation in the Visayas area na salanta ng Typhoon Yolanda. So for them, ito pa yung nangyayari sa kanila, even for them na nasa front line, 1 week, that's what they give, no? Maximum is 2 weeks, pero fatigue exhausted na pag 2 weeks. Pero there are some employees kasi na they want to really stay. Gusto nilang magbabad kasi they feel na parang they're really into that
Oh, and they get
tapos,
inspired, they get motivated,
yes.
you know,
Mm-mm.
to be of help
And
to
then they feel
people.
na they are needed there.
Yeah.
Parang parang they cannot leave, no? They're so attached already.
May attachment na, okay.
Community, oo. So, parang ayaw na nilang umalis dun sa lugar na yon. So, what they do, pero syempre, the organization still has the call, no? Up to maximum. Makikiusap yan 1 week, makikiusap pa extend na another week. But so that's the maximum, 2 weeks, and you have to get out of the place. So when they get out of the place, they come to me for their debriefing.
Okay.
Before they go back home. So ang instruction sa kanila, so I process them, ano yung mga experiences nila, and then hindi lang purely psychosocial support kasi ito, may kasama na rin counseling. So, I process them, and then basta processing, mostly processing yung gagawin. And then I assess if they needed more help or not. And then they are sent home to rest. So some would request na babalik ulit sila. No, babalik ulit sila because they want to help in the relief operation. So some are approved, some naman hindi. So it depends on the need dun sa ground and dun sa need sa office din nila.
Okay. You mentioned already some challenges, but you may still be able to remember other challenges when you are responding to a disaster as a psychologist. So ano pa yung mga ibang challenges na na-encounter mo, and how did you address those challenges?
So, yun, as I mentioned, kailangan updated ka sa situation sa ground. So, coordination is really very important. And then, sometimes there are withdrawn people, no? They will not join. So, we respect them, no? Kung ayaw nilang mag-join, parang nasa palipaligid lang sila, gano'n, and they don't want to join. So, challenge din yun. Pero, of course, we know now we cannot force people to join if they are not ready or if they do not want to. And then, ang isang challenge doon, pag hindi siya masyadong coordinated, like the one we had in the Taal volcano eruption, kasi there was an organization that tied up with us, no? So ang point person, ang nagko-coordinate talaga was that organization. So, parang nasa gitna lang kami. So, we were just waiting for the instructions, gano'n. And then, when para nagkaroon ng pagkukulang dun sa announcement or dun sa pagbibigay ng information, so, dun ko nakita na people should be made more aware of the psychological and psychosocial support services that will be given when you get there. So, ma-explain dun, I think it should start first with a point person. Ano ba talaga ang group, psychosocial support group na to? Anong gagawin nila? Para ma-announce niya ng tama doon sa mga tao sa evacuation centers or sa community. Sometimes kasi hindi naman eksakto sa evacuation center, but they're back to the community. So, community din minsan, we go to the community, and then yun, ma-announce ng maayos dun sa mga people sa community.
So who is supposed to make the announcement? And just for example, I mean, in terms of the psychosocial services, how do you make people aware of the psychosocial services being available for the people?
In my other experiences, alam na nila na there's a group of psychologists coming. So okay. I think it really, there's a very big factor doon, yung alam ng point person ano yung grupo at ano yung gagawin ng grupo para mabigay niya yung information na maayos sa mga tao. So in those cases, naging talagang patok na patok yung services. Talagang umaapaw yung nag-avail ng services.
Paano, I'm just interested in dissemination. Paano ino-orient ang mga tao? Meron bang mga flyers o by verbal lang?
By verbal, oo. Wala nang time to give the flyers, especially kung kulang naman sa resources din.
Oh, yeah.
Disaster area. So it's more of verbal. No? And the organization skills of the person, na yung point person doon.
So basically, ang mga tao may awareness na before kayo pumunta.
Yes, so may awareness na may dadating na grupo na ganito and this is going to do, ganun. So yun yung maganda na maayos yung coordination. But in our experience nakagrupo na. Pag maganda yung coordination, nakagrupo na sila. So yung pagdating nyo nun, naka-ready na yung group, i-assign na lang sino mag-handle ng per group, batch by batch na group. So pag magandang coordination, ganun lang nangyayari. But dito sa Taal Volcano eruption, parang kulang yung information or siguro hindi naging maling bigay ng maayos or enough na information yung organization na nag-coordinate. So parang the people were not aware that we were there, no? They were not aware na may psychosocial support. So pumila sila sa medical mission, sa dental mission, pero sa psychosocial support, parang hindi kami pinapansin. Parang so we thought, parang hindi sila aware. So we had to go out and tell them na we're offering this kind of support. Pero at that time, nagsabay-sabay kasi, no? We went there, may relief operation going on, merong medical mission going on, dental mission going on, and then the psychosocial support. So we were given kanya-kanyang area kami. So, syempre yung tao, hindi naman din makapila yung isang katawan sa iba-ibang, di ba? Iba-ibang services. So, pipila sila kung saan yung mas priority nila. Di ba? May sakit sila, even if it's not connected to the disaster, but they have that certain ailment. So, pipila sila dun sa medical mission. Tapos yung iba naman gusto magpaayos ng pipila sila dun. So, yun ang priorities nila at that time. So, hindi nila priority yung psychosocial support. So,
naranasan mo ba na merong may dalawang team na dumating?
I think yes. So, oo. Nagkasabay sa Taal Volcano eruption.
So
that also affected yung kasi parang nauna silang dumating.
Okay.
Avail na sila sa kanila.
Okay. At the same time,
so yung coordination pumapasok na sinasabi ko. Dapat hindi nagkakasabay-sabay yung different organization. So, kasi hindi naman kami nag-coordinate. We were just invited to join that NGO to give our support service.
Okay. You mentioned already some risk. Can you add more sa ibang risk na naranasan mo?
Risk, okay. Challenges, or if I can also add more to the challenges. So if you're working with an international organization, challenge din yung working with other nationalities. No?
Yes.
If they have different values and
work orientations.
Yes. And then they tend to group together. Tapos kayo mga Filipino, kayo lang din. So they don't. So ganon. So parang may feeling na they are more superior than us Filipinos. Parang ganon. Okay. So those are the things that you have to be aware also and be prepared for.
And how did you handle that?
Ako, I did not take it so personally if they wanted to be by themselves. Basta as long as I was just focused on my work. Kaya lang, in your team, like we had a Dutch in our team, we had a British in our team. So, what happened pala, which may lead to the one of the later siguro when so meron siya mga values na different sa amin that affect so yung relation, yung work namin. Like, ito pala, we went to Ormoc to give, what's this? I forgot that term. We were supposed to do a particular work to give information. I forgot the term for that. And then, yung tao, the group that was there, we were supposed to give you information. Yun yung role namin at that time. But then when we got there, parang nag-open na yung mga participants about their experiences. So naiba na siya. And then, I cannot, hindi ko na ma-stop yung mga tao from sharing kasi nandun na, binuksan na yung And then they really wanted to share, talk about their experience. But we were not supposed to do that kasi ang gagawin lang namin at that time was to give them the information about what was happening in the area. So nagalit yung Dutch. Bakit ko daw pinabayaan na she would not understand kasi nga we were talking in Filipino. So nakikita lang niya nagka-cry yung mga tao. So nagalit siya bakit ko daw pinabayaan na it went that way. So I told her na in our Filipino culture, when that happens, hindi mo po pwedeng pabayaan. I mean, you just brush it off na it's already there. They're crying and they're expressing their experiences. You just brush it off. We cannot do that. It's not the way that we do it in our culture. So I had to explain that to her. So eventually, she was able to understand where I was coming from. Okay. Another thing, like in the relief of, the packing of the relief, there was an Indian national who was supervising this group of Filipinos who were doing the packing for the relief. And they were laughing, telling stories to one another. Of course, he wouldn't understand what they were talking about, but he saw them laughing and smiling. So he got mad. He said, why are these Filipinos laughing and smiling when they already had that disaster? So iba yung mga values, mga pananaw, perspectives, iba. So they cannot understand some cultural aspects of the Filipino. So ganon, nagkakaroon ng mga differences, lumalabas talaga yun. And also dealing with difficult behaviors and problematic attitudes of some people in the team. So may mga personalities na feeling all-knowing, mga may superiority complex. There are also gossipers. But they make false stories. Okay, but these are people who are not in the ground, like admin people mostly. But mga frontliners, they don't usually do that kasi focus sila sa work. Tsaka iba yung kindness sa heart nila, yung mga frontliners. But these are, yung gossipers, yung mga admin people because they stay in the office. Yun. Pero yung sa ground talaga, meron din mga ganun feeling all-knowing.
But not part of the team.
Yung feeling all-knowing and superiority complex na nasa team namin. Because this was a person, Filipina siya, but she came from Vietnam, from another Asian country. So feeling niya dahil galing siya sa ibang bansa, mas magaling siya sa amin. So she was really talking about her experiences in the other country. Parang nagbo-boast siya. So everyone was feeling it already. So parang lumalayo na rin yung iba sa kanya. So yun, you have to deal with those kind of behaviors and na hindi ma-affect yung outcome ng work ninyo because you have to bear this.
Kasi you mentioned na kanina na sa team, ngayon laki nakikita-kita, hindi naman kayo magkakaibigan talaga.
So hindi mo naman out. There are total strangers to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Fatigue and stress, syempre, that's a big thing that you will experience in disaster response.
That's important. Yeah, it's important. How do you deal with that? Ano ginagawa mo kapag pagod ka na?
I make
exhausted. Parang exhausted ka na? Parang exhausted
yes,
ka na?
I make sure that I have much sleep, with 8 hours of sleep, and then I relax after work. I go inside my room and relax all by myself. So I have my me time. Do my stretchings in the morning for exercise, so ganon. So meron din mga times before that I experienced na because they know that my background is psychology. Parang they want to have ambush counseling with me. So, nasa-sense ko naman yun. And I know, yun nga sinasabi ko, papasok yung boundary, di ba? What your role there is to give psychosocial support to the community, not members. So, alam ko na yun in my mind. So, I just talk to them for a few minutes and then I excuse myself. I go to my room. That is my way of conserving my energy also. Kasi, to me kung lahat kinakausap ko, di ba? And then morning I will be working the whole day in the field. So that was my way of taking care of myself. No?
Kasi just simply looking at the situation of the people, it is already exasperating.
So you have to be aware of that, setting your all of your boundaries to take care of yourself. Siyempre, proper nutrition is very important, hydration. So always make sure na meron kayong baon na tubig. So the team leader make sure of that. Kung hindi naman, ikaw na mismo, make sure na may dala-dala kang tubig. So ako dati, when we were in Tacloban, very precious talaga yung tubig. Kahit na kukunti na lang yung laman ng galon, binibit-bit ko talaga yan. Kasi you cannot get water from anywhere. Yun. Yung fast-paced ang schedule and work, no? Hindi po pwedeng yung pa-slow-slow ka ng galaw. So everything is so fast. No? Everything happens so fast. So kailangan naka-adjust ka doon. You also have to be moving fast. And
hindi pwedeng papagal-pagal.
Oo, hindi po pwede yon. Okay? Lahat mabilisan. And then, quick decisions, but they should be rational and valid. So you have to focus and comply kung ano yung napag-usapan ninyo. And yung isang challenge also is medical concerns. Okay? Kaya dapat meron kang mga first aid kit. And this, I had experienced that when we were in Ormoc, no, we had allergy, but it was not our fault, no. So it was something from the package na binili sa amin ng organization. So we had this quick run bag. So meron kaming backpack, and then andun yung mga pagkain na po pwede namin kainin. Hirap kasi delata yung binigay. So sabi namin, quick run bag ba to? Kasi it's so heavy naman. Kasi puro delata yung pinadala. Sana yung nakasachet na lang. And then they also gave us yung mga delata na kailangan ng can opener.
Can opener.
Can opener, walang binigay sa amin ng mga utensils, fork or spoon, wala. So, yun nga, maganda rin yung nagpo-provide sila ng quick run bag, andun na yung mga kailangan ninyo na mga gamit, and then you just put in yung mga kailangan mo na damit din para maisang lang. No? Because I was imagining myself if we be running in that place, iba may nangyari doon and we will be running. So, kailangan yung backpack mo, madali mo lang na kuhanin and madaling bitbitin. So, going back to the medical concern, so maganda din na meron kang first aid kit. And it was good that we had, I don't know because I always carry meds with me, but that time wala akong stock na pang-allergy. So it was good. We were in Ormoc at that time, and meron open pa na butika doon. May mga open na kasi ang stores doon that time eh. So we were able to buy our medicine before proceeding to Tacloban. But if it happened in Tacloban, nahirapan siguro kami naghanap ng meds namin kasi all the stores were closed. Except na lang kung yung headquarters namin sa Tacloban had that stock of anti-allergy. Yeah. So those are the challenges that I had experienced in my disaster response work.
Okay.
And with regards to risk, you asked me earlier, of course, the physical safety, no, the physical safety always has a risk, no. That's why you have to have the knowledge of the general safety of the area. Like, for example, you plan to get today to go to that particular area, you have to coordinate first doon sa area na yun. Is it raining there? Can we proceed to go there or not? Diba? Baka may mga landslide that's happening. So you have to be properly updated. And
doon sa lahat ng pinuntahan mo, ano yung pinaka mataas yung risks?
It would be Bohol. Kasi
that's earthquake, right? Earthquake.
Yeah, may mga aftershocks pa.
Okay.
And then, pag nagta-travel kami, di ba, puro bundok. Tinitingnan namin yung
may mga baka mag-landslide.
Oo, baka may nagro-roll na pala. Ang lalaki pa naman ng mga
bato.
Oo, sa mga bundok nila. And meron ding time na natapos namin yung work, and then the team leader told that meron din kaming transpo din kasi na naka-assign sa amin. So, the team leader decided that we visit one place. I think parang contact niya kasi yun. I don't know kung ano yung pinag-usapan nila. Pagdating namin doon, it was a winding road, and then bundok na yung gilid na to, and it was raining. So talagang ano kami, parang ninenervyos na kami sa loob ng sasakyan nung time na talagang praying talaga na kasi isa lang yung daan, isa lang din yung napapasok, isa lang din yung pabalik. So we were really praying hard na safe kami na makalabas sa area na yon. And we had also one experience na yung sasakyan namin, doon na rin nilagay yung relief, no? Yung relief staff. So parang nabigatan yung, ano lang siya parang pick up lang siya, offer lang ng isang volunteer lang din yung sasakyan niya. Tapos pag akyat namin, dumadaus-dos na pababa yung sasakyan. So that was another experience of risk also. And aside from the physical safety, of course, yung nourishment also, no? That's also you have to check in if there's available food, there's available drinking water dun sa pupuntahan ninyo, saka yung pang take a bath also. When we were in Tacloban during that time, it was announced na yung kanilang water supply ay may E. coli.
Mm-hmm.
But we had no choice but to use that water for taking a bath. But of course, yung pang drink namin and also yung pang when we brush our teeth, anything comes in the mouth, everything was yung pure bottled water. Okay. So another thing that can have the risk is the psychological impact also. Because when you get there, you may be traumatized also yourself.
Yeah.
The environment itself. Disaster that has happened, and then people are crying. Yeah. So that's one thing, no? And then
just for example, yung may mga casualty, wala na kayong nadatna na mayroong pagpatay sa kalsada, wala kayong nadatna na gano'n.
Sa Bohol malinis na siya. Sa Tacloban, madumi pa yung area, but during that time, when we get there was an ongoing mass burial. Mass burial that was going. Pero hindi namin siya nalapitan, but we saw it happening.
At saka yung amoy.
Amoy, yeah. Even if the van was closed, when we arrived in Tacloban, talagang pumapasok yung amoy. Talagang it was parang amoy ng dead talaga.
Yeah.
Yung pumapasok na amoy. Even in Ormoc, we took the boat from Cebu City to Ormoc. When we were arriving dun sa shore ng Ormoc, talagang lumalabas talaga yung amoy.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Yeah, and then like what I said earlier, yung mga frontliners, no, in the disaster response, they have that feeling that they're so much needed in that place that they don't want to get out anymore, which is not recommended. So that's one thing also. Na-raise doon yung feel difficulty to detach from the community. So that's something that you have to
may nangyayari ba na gano'n?
Yun, yung mga dun sa international organization, yung kanilang mga relief distributors, yun, they want to stay longer than 2 weeks, pero talagang pinupull out na sila dun sa area.
Before I forget, May, how did you say goodbye to the people when you ended the program?
Kasi each day naman nag-e-end na, di ba? So yun, each session, yun, we say na we're happy that we thank them, of course, for coming to the session. Then we pray, and then we are praying for you that you will be safe, that you will be able to recover from this. So mga ganun lang.
So walang very formal na ending?
Wala na.
Okay.
Every session na lang na nag-e-end. Kasi after the session, they go home na rin.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And then the spiritual aspect also, I mentioned that earlier as one of the risks also. Like it can trigger yung mga spiritual values mo. When you see the disaster, the people who have died, or the families of those people who have died. So you may question God, di ba? Where is God at this time? Why did God let this happen? So yun, kailangan strengthen mo din yung spirituality mo. A risk there.
All right, you're done. All right, so what is your most unforgettable experience? It can be a funny experience, it can be a very embarrassing experience, or a very impactful experience.
Yeah, yung actually, I don't have just one.
Oh, yeah. I know, with all those experiences that you had. Yeah.
The most unforgettable experience was in Tacloban. I experienced their real hunger, as in hunger talaga.
Oh.
Kasi we came from Ormoc and we were a team traveling, and then we have that Dutch team leader at that time. Ang mga foreigners pala, they eat only once. The breakfast was enough for her. It was good for her for the whole day. Tapos kami, nag-breakfast kami. Pagdating ng lunch, gutom na kami. Nalipasan pa kami ng lunch. As in, sobrang gutom na kami. Sakit na ng ulo namin. Tapos, I told one of our teammates na before na mag-order na ng food namin dun sa pinanggalingan na hotel sa Ormoc para yun yung lunch namin. But then, meron palang, I think it was the Dutch or the other person who came from another Asian country na nagsabi sa kanya na wag na. So, hindi na nga siya nag-order. So, pagdating ng Tacloban, as in, wala ka talagang makukuhanan ng food. Doon ko talaga na-experience yun, as in, wala. Wala kang makukuhanan ng pagkain. So, what happened? Sakit-sakit na ng ulo, pagod sa work, ang init, then walang food, ang sakit na lipasan na ng gutom. So, the quick run bag na binigay sa amin, hindi naman namin mabuksan yung mga delata na pinabaon sa amin kasi walang can opener. And then, ang meron lang doon yung na-open na ganon, yung easy to open, was sardines. They had one chocolate bar in the bag, so I ate that. Sabi pa sa amin, do not eat it. It's the last thing that you eat. Sabi kong gano'n. Ay, ako gutom na ako. As in, kinain ko talaga siya. And then, gutom pa rin ako. It was not enough yung one chocolate bar. So, I ate the sardines. So, I opened the sardines. Walang kutsara. As in, kinamay ko talaga since sobrang gutom na ako. But may doon, yung challenge doon, if I get out of the van, andun yung mga tao waiting for the relief operation, which has not, kasi nauna kami. So, sabi ko, what will happen? Makita nila ako kumakain doon and I cannot offer them anything. So, kumain ako sa van, nagalit naman yung mga tao sa van, ang baho-baho daw ng...
May sardinas.
So, sabi, lumabas ka ng van, sabi nila sa arte-arte nyo, ito nga pinapamigay natin sa relief operation. So, ang ending talaga, pinalabas ako. Doon ako kumain ng sardinas sa labas ng van with na kinakamay ko siya sa sobrang gutom ko talaga. And what happened during that time, gusto nung team leader namin, antayin pa namin yung relief operation, but that was not our work anymore. Kaya lang gusto niyang masama doon sa relief operation na yun. Tapos, we ended up na ang next kain namin was dinner time na. So, yun talaga, hunger talaga ang nangyari. And yung isa naman, yung pineto ko kanina, yung sa Samar, na we were supposed to meet at the barangay hall, pero wala nang barangay hall when we...
Nasira na.
O sira na pala siya when we arrived there. Due lack of coordination due to the poor CP signal at that time. So, na-organize naman yung tao, but na-delay nga yung work namin o na-waste yung time. And then, special bonds formed with fellow disaster responders. Yun, that's happy thing. Kasi if you're bonded with a very noble mission, iba yung lalim din nung bonds na na-form. Especially yung parang everyone is so kind, everyone is so caring, and giving. So that's what I felt dun sa mga kasama ko sa disaster response. Siyempre, excluding yung may mga bad attitudes. But majority of them, they are really, really good. And up to now, I'm still in touch with them. So nabuo yung friendship. And yun nga, even if like, for example, I was in I met somebody, yung team leader ng Operation Blessing in Reming before in Albay. And then we met again. I met again the organization in Bohol. So parang, and then when I went to Samar, I went to meet them in Tacloban. I passed by Tacloban. So nakitira nila to bond with them at their Tacloban headquarters. So ganun yung mga nabubuan na special bonds when you work in disaster response. Tsaka we also experience sleeping in one room together, no? Kanya-kanyang latag na kayo ng mga dala-dala ng foam, tapos you sleep in one place together, walang arte-arte. So yun, yung mga special memories. And yung mga faces ng mga tao na masaya na natulungan sila, yung smiling faces. Of course, nare-remember ko pa rin mga crying, pero I also remember yung mga happy faces na happy sila na natulungan sila.
Okay, thank you. And how do you evaluate? I mean, actually, you mentioned about this already, evaluating the psychological services. How do you do this?
So for our team, we have feedbacking after each day. No, we evaluate what's good and what's bad, or we can also give feedback to one another, like yung kasama mo sa team, we can also do that. And then pagbalik sa Manila, for example, the organization that took you is based in Manila, so they will call you for the briefing also and evaluation of the whole program. Sa feedback naman from participants, you can do that at the end of the session. How are you feeling at the end of the session? So you can gauge from there kung nakatulong ka ba or hindi dun sa ginawa mo.
And generally, how was the response of the people?
Always, they are happy. They are grateful. They are happy na nabigyan sila ng ganun na kind of service. Wala pa akong experience na nalungkot or disappointed.
Okay. Na trauma ulit?
Oo, wala pa naman. So far, wala nagsabi sa akin.
All right. And what do you suggest to improve the services that we render to the victims of the natural disaster?
Okay. So I have always been emphasizing yung coordination. No, that's very important. So before going to the disaster area, during the work there, and at the end of the work. Because you also have to do the endorsement and the referral preparation, the planning, the itinerary, the schedule and activities, everything should be well planned. And then and where you're going to stay, the food arrangement. The food arrangement, ito pa pala yung isang unforgettable experience ko in Samar. We had a team leader. And then parang it was her first time to do this job, but she was assigned as a team leader of the organization. And then I think I told her dun sa headquarters namin, yung municipal hall na sira. And there was karinderya where we ate. So I told her, you mag-order ka na ng pang-lunch natin kasi yun ang babaunin natin. But she didn't do that. So when we arrived there, parang nakulang pa ng coordination kasi hindi ready yung mga barangay officials when we got there. And we were supposed to talk to the barangay officials. So nagtawag-tawag pa si barangay captain, ganon. And then, wala kaming food. Wala palang mabilhan na food dun sa area. So ang nangyari, si barangay captain pa yung nag-provide ng food para sa namin, which is a no-no. Kasi kayong doon para mag-help. Hindi yung bisita ka.
Sikasuhin pa kayo.
Yes, so si barangay captain kung saan-saan pa nagganap amin. So wala din kaming mabilhan. So na tindahan. So ang nangyari, so actually that was a feedback that we gave after the program na, no, na yun nga, one of the suggestions na part of the preparation na pati yung food is planned kung saan mo pupunin yun, babaunin mo ba siya, or may mabibilan ka ba doon sa pupuntahan mo na lugar. But maganda na yung magbaon ka kasi you won't know kung may store nga doon.
Oo nga. Miski mga biscuits lang,
yes, oo. Ganon. And then the next thing is spreading more awareness about the PFA and the psychosocial services. So ito yung sinabi ko kanina na it starts with the point person who is well informed about the group and the services that is going to be given para tama din yung information na mabibigay niya sa community. And then organizing these people who would want to avail of the services. And more effective system, like yung halimbawa yung organization, nagsabay-sabay yung kanilang relief, medical, dental, and psychosocial. So there should be a better system para maka-avail yung mga tao sa psychosocial support, hindi lang dun sa relief, medical, and dental. Kasi sayang naman yung service na nandun na hindi nila ma-avail. And then endorsement and referral system should be strengthened also. So even, I think it should be something that's done in the preparation phase, pre-disaster phase, na kahit wala pang disaster, meron ng referral system in place para ready na siya when the disaster happens. So this be strengthened, especially for follow-ups na cases, no? Kasi yung disaster responders will not be staying there for long. So there should be as part of the planning, meron na silang nakatoka kung sino ba yung gagawa ng follow-up later. And the creation of long-term programs for survivors who develop psychological problems is also good to make it a part of the preparation phase.
So, ibig sabihin, hindi pa siya in place ngayon at this time? Yung last na minention mo?
Parang it's just the short term of PFA.
And do you think that short term is not enough? I mean...
Yes, kasi like if you have follow-ups, you need to do follow-up. Meron na dapat program for them.
Yeah. At the same time, hindi mo rin kasi masasize up kung wala kang tawag ito, proseso ng evaluation. Kung kailangan pa talaga nila o okay na.
So we had no way of knowing na rin kung yung mga in-endorse namin, mga ni-refer namin ay
nagawa
ng follow-up.
Oo. Okay. Another thing, just for example, in terms of psychological services, meron bang pwedeng idagdag na proseso in terms of psychological processes maliban sa psychological first aid?
I think that would be enough, no? Just be well-planned dun sa mga gusto nyong activities na gagawin, especially for children.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Anything you wanted to say before we go to the last one?
Okay. So, my message for those who wish to do PFA and psychosocial support in that disaster response. So, kanina sinabi ko, you have to assess yourself if you're ready to do the work. If it's really your passion to do disaster response work, and are your skills enough to do the work, and of course yung capacity ng full self mo in terms of physical, psychological, mental, spiritual, and social. So all of this, you have to check kung kayanin mo ba yung work. And prepare yourself in all aspects, which I already mentioned earlier, and also focusing or emphasizing self-care. Even when you're in disaster response, you have to do self-care and allot me time for yourself. I'm blessed that in the many disaster response work that I did, I was healthy. I never got sick when I was there for work. It was due to the self-care that I had done for myself. And be mindful of your boundaries, not just the time boundaries, work boundaries, but also physical boundaries, because you will be meeting people from different backgrounds. So kahit na siguro, and it's the first time that you will be meeting them. So you have to be very careful. And also, syempre, you may find people you trust, but still keep your boundaries in telling information about yourself and exposing yourself to them. No? So it's be mindful of your boundaries and stay with your body and with your team when you go to the ground. No? usually meron team yan, or you're composed of a team, and meron ka ring body, no? That's the ideal. So you always stay with your body and your team because you're a stranger in that area. Baka mamaya saan-saan ka ikot-ikot o nagpalaboy-laboy. Okay, so ganun. And then, with regards to preparation pala, and I'd like to share lang, no, regarding the accommodation. Some international organization, although I had not experienced it, but there were some volunteers who did the disaster response work. They were living in tents, dun sa ground lang. As in, para nagka-camping sila. So, it may also happen to you. So, be ready if it happens to you. Okay? And lastly, of course, but it's not the least, trust in God and pray always for safety and guidance. Kasi yun yung magbibigay sa'yo ng lakas during the disaster response that you're doing.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, May. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you more than anything else. Thank you for the very enriching journey that you had with the communities who experienced the disaster, the natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And kaya sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, when we're talking about psychological services, it's very important to listen to people who are in the ground. Na nandoon talaga sila sa field, na hindi lang konsepto nila ng psychology ang dala nila, pero yung kaluluwa nila, yung puso nila, yung passion nila sa pagsisilbi sa tao. And that is the most important thing. Kasi when you are in the field, you are exposed to different situations, different scenario. But the end of everything is like na handa ka na yakapin yung sitwasyon. Not only as a psychologist, but as a human being, but as a Filipino. I mean, looking at the very devastating situation of the Filipino people. And at this time, you were parang binigyan mo kami ng parang tour sa disaster. Very graphic na sitwasyon, very graphic na totoong pag-respond, mga challenges at iba pa. At hindi matatawaran yung karanasan mo. At hindi ito, kasi pag nagbasa ka ng libro, andyan ang konsepto eh. Pero hindi sinasabi ng libro yung actual na karanasan ng isang psychologist, ng isang disaster responder katulad mo. Kaya isang malaking pagpapasalamat sa isang very enriching na information na nagbubula sa iyong malalim na karanasan.
Thank you din sa pag-invite sa akin. And I'm so happy that I am able to give information and share my experiences to your students. And one thing pala I remember, it's very important also to have the debriefing after the disaster response work. That is really going to help you. Your own debriefing, some like if the organization who took you, they will sponsor a debriefing for you.
For the team.
Yeah, for the
Kasi baon-baon mo yung karanasan iba-ibang karanasan, yung pangyayari ng mga tao, pero consciously or unconsciously you must absorb, you attach to the situation na hindi mo alam na naapektuhan ka na in one way or another.
That's the importance of the briefing and evaluation of the program. And idagdag ko na rin, I was blessed also with the international organization that I had before, that for every deployment, we were at Cebu headquarters, but we were deployed to different places each time. So after each deployment, meron siyang debriefing.
Okay.
That was really good. Pero mahirap din, share ko lang din, mahirap din if it's non-Filipino, yung
nagpa-facilitate.
Yeah, kasi
iba kasi yung approach
yung level nun nasa emotions na talaga ako, gusto ko nang mag-deal dun sa
sila nandito.
Nasa cognitive, nilalagay talaga, binabalik niya sa cognitive. So I felt kulang yung ginawa na processing sa akin at that time.
Saka hindi lang emotion kasama na yung buong pagkatao mo Di ba? Okay. All right. So again, thank you so much, and again not only for my student, but for all those who are listening. So if you need the expertise of May in terms of trauma management, specifically in relation to disaster, then you can always rely on the expertise of May. May.
And
All right.
thanks to my mentor also, Doc
Yeah.
Bole.
Dr.
He
Bolet
was the
Bautista
one who exposed me to disaster response.
of the University of the Philippines, right?
Yes.
All right. Again, thank you so much. So we're closing this session with a big gratitude, big thank you for our resources speaker, May. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and you're welcome.